It's me, Galen. Galen's got Parkinson's. Ooh. Halloween's approaching. I found myself today, for a number of reasons, being in a reflective frame of mind. Not sad, just reflective. And that caused me to consider the past. And I began to think about what games I have played in the past that I would call the very best games for a lot of reasons. I've not been scientific about these criteria. There were the sort of games that when I thought, go on, best games ever, and I went, yep, for different reasons, and I'll explain why. As I get older, I realise that on the one hand, I'm incredibly fortunate. I rent a property which has a lot of space for wargaming. But I have Parkinson's disease, which is making physical access to some of these places more difficult. If I am forced to move, I can't take all of my wargames things with me. It's not going to be possible. And I'm 70. How long is it going to be before I'm even limited to, I don't know, a suitcase full of stuff under a bed? I don't know what's going to happen in the future. What would you take? If you're on a desert island, you're allowed to pack a finite amount of things. What are you going to take? Now, I'm not even thinking about things like, gosh, scenery and whatever. I don't know what had happened about them. But, you know, specific games. So anyway, that got me thinking, what are your best ever games ever? I don't want to get maudlin or gloomy. I'm not doing that. So forget that. I'm just sort of explaining the background of sort of why I'm here and why my reasons for doing what I'm doing are not necessarily particularly well thought out. They're just gut reactions from the heart. So first game I will put on that list, because it's a game I remember, and it was the first time I played a big game, a cooperative game, and it was at the War Games Club, and it would be probably 1973. I had a relatively small force of Prussians, but the game was all the older players, all the chaps who've wargamed a long time, brought all of their Napoleonic figures, and everyone put all of their French on one side, and they put all of their British on the other side. It was 25mm, huge table. One of the older men was in command, and as you got younger and less experienced, what you commanded got less and less. And I was given command of a section. There were 30 infantry with me as a young lieutenant, and I was told to go to a crossroads where there was a blockhouse, like a wooden cabin, and I was told to hold that position and report back any intelligence to the high command, who were several moves away. Easy enough, you'd think. So I did that, and I marched off into my position, and I did everything I thought I needed to do. Set up defensive perimeters and reinforced the building, became a defensive position. During the battle, very little happened for me. There were things happening in other places, but all of a sudden, a French cavalryman on his own rode like crackers down the road right in front of me. And he didn't even check. He didn't know whether he knew we were there and risked it. I don't know. But we fired at him from the blockhouse and we killed him. So, umpire said, what are you doing? So I went out and searched him. And the umpire said, oh, you found this in his backpack. And it was a little sketch map of a French gun position, which was behind a wood, pretty much in front of me. So I crossed the road into the wood, through the wood. French gun position was behind the wood. Sounds fair enough, doesn't it? And I thought, well, okay, I can get bravery, I can have a medal. What I'm going to do, I'm going to abandon my position, I'm going to go into the wood, I'm going to go through the wood, I'm going to destroy the gun, and then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to send a messenger to my commander-in-chief saying I have destroyed a gun and here are the orders that I got from the French. So off I went, got into the wood, and it wasn't empty. It had 62 divisions of 30 voltigeurs hiding in it. I hadn't spotted because I didn't scout it. In the ensuing firefight, my unit got decimated, surprised, ambushed, shot to bits, ran away. My character was killed. After the game, when we were having coffee, one of the older men who'd been at the British High Command said to me, it's a good job you got killed because it saved us the job of shooting you. So that's one of my favourite games. One of my favourite games for a couple of reasons. One, I like that big collaborative game and I like playing them now, all these years later. Two, it taught me a lot about commanding small units in big games. It taught me a lot about following orders. I'd have been much better off just sending that bit of paper back to High Command, never firing another shot in anger. I would have come out of that with a much better reputation, because that fed into future games where people sort of looked at me and went, yeah, don't want him, he's going to get picked last, he's daft. So that was the sort of first game that sprang into my mind. Chronologically now, going along, I think the next game I remember, my brother and I played a lot of 25mm miniature figurines, fantasy or science fiction. There's one particular fantasy battle which it does always stand out in my mind. And again, it was probably 72, 73. And we didn't have many figures of any sort, but he had his army and I had mine, and they were a bit mixed up. They weren't good versus bad, they were just my figures versus his. And we didn't have a lot of scenery. We had a farm building, we had a couple of Britain's trees, we had troops. And I had some dwarfs and I had some elves, and he had some ents and huons, and goblins and orcs and wolves and sort of things he had. We didn't have any morale tables, we just fought to the last man, and the rules were incredibly simple. Made it up as we went along, partly. Towards the end of the battle, one of my elves, with a burning arrow, had shot it into his tree, his evil, spooky dark tree, and it caught fire. But we said, it carries on fighting till it throws a 6, at which point it drops dead. So it was still wandering about, stomping on things. By the end of the battle, all that my brother had left was a burning tree. And all that I had left was a dwarf with an axe. So, my turn. My dwarf with an axe ran up to this tree. And we decided if my dwarf threw a 6, because he was only a little dwarf with a little axe in miniature figurines. The original ones, the second generation sword and sorcery were bigger, but the original ones were tiny, with tiny little axes. If he throws a 6, he kills the tree. So I threw a 6, killed the tree, puff. But then we said, well, yeah, but we were doing simultaneous turns, so the tree's got to do something. So we threw for the tree. It got 6. It died, and it fell on my dwarf and killed him. So I killed the tree, and the tree killed me. And the green grass grew all around, and the green grass grew all around. Same period, my brother and I shared a bedroom. We had a baby brother who had his own room. Well, so me and my brother had a bedroom we shared, and we had he had his bed, and we had a big table, and then I had my bed. So you could sit on your bed, kneel on your bed, wargame in the middle. And I had miniature figurines, saying pinheads, and he had miniature figurines, troops from Aquila, Death Angels, sort of blind, funny horses, sort of dream chaps. There was a guy that looked like a clown with a big conch, and he had lobster snippers and a big knobbly club. He had them. But I don't remember the battle, because it wasn't a battle. What we did, we got all the white Lego that we could find and built defences. So I built a wall, he built a wall, and then behind those walls we built a bit like a trench system, I suppose. Buildings, firing steps, supplies, and every now and again, I'd have maybe sound pinners on the wall, and he'd have Aquila troops on his wall, and we might occasionally shoot at each other. I don't remember anybody getting killed, and I don't really remember any sort of attempt to take the other's position. It was more of a couple of hours chatting and having fun. I remember that game. Another game, well, I'm going to call this a game, and I don't know if you're going to agree, but I was away from my girlfriend. She lived quite a long way from me, and it was Christmas, and I wasn't going to see her till New Year. And where I lived was quite countrified, quite rural, little villages. And then they all fed into a big village, which was where the pit was, where all the miners were. And one night, and it was rough, it was rough, and there were a lot of dangerous things happening, gangs and youths and unpleasant things. And one day, it was night time, it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I got myself all dolled up as if I was going on a combat mission. I had my combat jacket on, scarf, I had a balaclava-y thing. I had my boots, and a stick, magic stick, and I set off into the night. I didn't know where I was going, actually, as it turns out. So what I did was I walked down this lane. It's called Bridle Path. It's not there anymore, it's part of a motorway. But as you walk along, I noticed in the wall on the left-hand side, there was a hole in the wall. I mean, the wall ended. It wasn't like you could have gone around the end of the wall, but there was a hole in the wall. So I thought, Narnia, let's go for that. So when I crawl through this hole, I am then in a fantasy world. I remember now, it's cold, it's frosty, it's dark, owls hooting and doing what owls do. So I crawled through the hole and I hid, and I thought, right, nobody's seen me on this mission. And about 2 miles away, through broken ground, farmland, hedges, was the next big village, which was noted for being quite rough and had a lot of gangs in it. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get to the sign that got that village name on it. That's my quest. I've got to touch it without being beaten up, killed, found, spotted, laughed at. So I did that. It took me ages. I don't remember seeing many people at that point. The hard bit was right at the end, where the sign was across a lit road. And the roads weren't very busy, but I still had to be sort of have my wits about me. So I shot across the road, touched the sign, And then I made my way back through a different way, and it was called the Long Plantation. And we called it the Wood, but it wasn't a wood. It was like a farmer had planted 2 rows of trees as a windbreak. And it had once you got to it, about half a mile, it was a sort of narrow path all the way through the wood. No lights, obviously. And then sort of maybe 20 yards of trees either side. So I made my way secretly like an elf back to the wood. And then when I got to the edge of the wood, I thought there's no way I'm going to go. If I went right, I'd have been alongside the main road, and that would have taken me home, but there's no way I was going to go along there and not get spotted. But if I went left, I could follow the first garden into a field, and then hugging the bottom of the garden fence and hedge, I could make my way along the field, which would eventually take me to the wall I'd first come to, back along the wall and back through the hole I came from. And that way, once I was back through the hole, I said, all bets are off, I'm home, that's it. I remember that game vividly. I loved it. I don't know why. I got such a buzz out of doing that. I'd do it again tomorrow. I'd do it again tonight. It was, probably wouldn't do it again tonight because the knees are hurting. But, you know, I don't know what it is about that thing, that imagination. It wasn't a war game. It was a sort of role play on my own. Some of you are now dialing social services to try and get me help. But I'm just being honest. Yeah, okay, I'm mad as a brush. I'm just being honest. The next big event was getting a copy of this. See, I'm prepared. Sorcerer's Cave. My wife had shared a room at college with a girl whose fiance, as was, became her husband, introduced us to Sorcerer's Cave one Sunday afternoon. Great game. You take out a card, you put it down, you've got to go of the card. Sometimes they're corridors, sometimes they're rooms. If it's a room and you're on level 1, you take one little card. It might be a monster, it might be a potential ally, it might be treasure. You deal with it, move on. It could be a dead end, in which case you can't go that way. You've got to come back. Every now and again you find stairs. If you find stairs going down, you start another level with, like, put a red tiddlywink by that lot of stairs and set up another card somewhere else in the room on the carpet, put a red tiddlywink by that, and that red one joins to that one. Because it's level 2, then you pick up 2 cards. If you go to level 3, you pick up 3 cards. And woe betide you if you get roof collapses because you're stuck on level 3 with no way out. Great game. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Play it a lot, play it all the time. Even now, 50 odd years later. Great game. Next, and it's because of Sorcerer's Cave that this happened, and I've mentioned this in other videos, so I apologise if you're a regular viewer. I ordered Sorcerer's Cave from, it must have been Wargames Illustrated, I would imagine at the time, late 70s. But I ticked the wrong box on the coupon, and I got Dungeons and Dragons Tomb of Horrors, which I'm going to play on Halloween. It's sort of about a week and a half away, and I'm going to play it using 1970s figures. So if you fancy that, well, you don't have to be there Halloween, you'll be there forever. And I didn't know what Dungeons and Dragons was. I'd not even heard of it. So I looked, started finding out about it, and I played it. Didn't need figures in them days. You got an A4 piece of card, and it had all the characters on, and you got treasures and everything that was in the game. But the bad stuff, they were all ants, little ants. And you poked them out of the card, and you put them in a little stand. Wow. Because this is like before figures were being made by Citadel. So yeah, that was good. So I started playing that. I played that a lot. I've still got it. I started playing it with you. I must still have it. I'm not fibbing. And then what happened next? So we've got Dungeons and Dragons. That made it. That's on the list, not because of Dungeons and Dragons. I changed Dungeons and Dragons. Like Dungeons and Dragons, you have points. and you get lots of points, and then you're dead. In my game, I've got a whole list of injuries. So if you fall down a hole in a trap, I throw a dice to see how badly injured your legs are. And if you break both your legs, the rest of your party have then got to start, well, what we're going to do? How are we going to get him home? We stuck. Makes you think. How much treasure are we prepared to sacrifice for this fat dwarf that we've got to now carry? None, mate, you're on your own. See you later. So yeah, so that was I'd say that's the next biggie because of the influence it's had on everything else I've done. During the 80s, I mainly did fantasy I started to use more what Games Workshop Citadel. I did sci-fi, again using 40k. I had big army of squats. That was my thing. I long for those days, my squats. They all wore orange and dark blue. They looked phenomenal. All had big bikes. I made an airfix model of a Gloucester Gladiator aeroplane. The sort of two-wing thing that dropped torpedoes to get the Bismarck. And I widened the hole at the top and I put a squat in it with goggles. And I made a scarf out of a metal toothpaste tube thing, and he had like a big old scarf coming out the back, and underneath he had a big ping pong ball as a bomb, and I painted it black and I wrote on the side, Acme Big Bomb. You could get away with that sort of stuff back then. Well, you could in some places. The only historical games I did back then were Colonial. I did Mahdi's Rebellion. And I've got a feeling the figures I bought were from Essex. Not the county, the manufacturer. But I definitely, and I made all my own buildings, scratch built all the buildings out of balsa wood and stuff. So that was pretty much the 80s. My children were born in the 80s. So by the end of the 80s, my oldest child was 5. So that was really took precedence over wargaming, financially and time-wise. Going into the 90s, again, I had sort of high-powered jobs. I was a deputy head, then I was a head teacher. We had war games clubs, but they pretty much were role-playing, sort of Dungeons and Dragon-esque. I'm not saying Dungeons and Dragons, but on that sort of role-play. I mean, we used to have games with like 20 or 30 kids in the same game because they all wanted to play, and I never said, limited numbers coming to the club. You want to come, you come. It was great. It was mad, but it was great. I hope some of those young people are still wargaming. I know that one of them certainly was until recently, but circumstances changed, don't they? I retired in about 2002, and I joined a blues band. So I spent a lot of time on the road, touring and performing and singing and making albums and things. So wargaming was a bit of a hiatus for me then. I did think about it, and I did fantasy role-play games, but again, I didn't have anyone to play with until about perhaps maybe about 1990. And I met a mate who did Rogue Trader on Hero Quest. So he had all these figures, he painted them, but he didn't really know about all the other stuff. So I had an old 15mm army from the 70s of Hinchcliffe Napoleonic. So we played that. Now, they weren't favourite games, but he was a scout leader. And when holidays came along, we used to use his scout hut, and we would put 2 table tennis tables together, and we would just get all our figures that we had, and we would have all the good guys on one side and all the bad guys on another, and we'd throw a dice. And we, oh no, you throw this week. If it's an odd number, you're bad. If you're an even number, you're good. A bit like real life. And it wasn't the games that were great, but what was great was when something came along, like his birthday, my birthday, Christmas. See, we wouldn't buy anything, but we'd make notes. And then we'd go to McDonald's. And while we were eating, we'd say, right, okay, what are you getting? And we'd talk about it and get all excited. And then we'd come all the way back. And on the way back, we'd buy all the things we'd seen. Fantastic. So that experience was not a great game, great experience. We started going to wargames fairs. Went to Triples in Sheffield quite early in my career when I was but a youth, because we lived in Doncaster. Sheffield's not far away, so I was used to big wargames fairs, conventions, that sort of thing, and again they were fun. I think we had lots of games. Sadly, more of the games were contentious and difficult than were exciting and good. I don't really think any of those games makes my list. When I get to the 2000s and onwards, I start to become the gamer I was in the 70s. And I get introduced when I joined my new club, where I go now, about 13 years ago, to different games, different rule sets. Muskets and Tomahawks, Shaco, Test of Honour, space games like Stargrave, 5 Parsecs from Home, games like Frostgrave, Necromunda, Blood Bowl. They were all happening. But again, it's hard to sit down and think of a game that smacks me in the mouth and says that night, that game, that afternoon was the best. So all that happened way in the past. Why? Why am I not finding the best game ever now? With all my knowledge and everything I know and all the stuff I've got, why are the games not as good as when I had a biscuit tin of soldiers and an elf set fire to a tree who then fell on the last dwarf? I don't know is the short answer. I wish I did, because I have a feeling there's some secret there, a bit like the secret of eternal life or turning base metal into gold. There's something I must be able to distill. So if I'm going to answer my question that I set myself right at the beginning, what is the best game I've ever played? And I'm now going to limit it to being a war game with understandable rules that everybody understood and played collaboratively within the group dynamic of a club. I'm going right back to 1973, big Napoleonic game where my only contribution was to get killed in a wood by being stabbed by voltigeurs and then being alienated by everyone else in the club because I was an idiot. I'm going to leave you with that rather puzzling thought. Ta-ra, Chuck.